wages and all pensions are now operating like cards, wages cards. Sure. So this is also put electronically in a very good way. So the idea of having more of an information-based type of operation is happening, and we're making a lot of interaction and interfacing between the different parts of the economy. If you talk about real estate tax, income tax and value-added tax, electricity payment, all that stuff will give us more information on how to include people much more. But we want to simplify for the small businesses the way we deal with taxes, and we have to differentiate between those who are evading taxes and those who cannot deal with such a complicated issue.
So final question, and very much in where we, to go full circle to where we started. What would you say are your one or two policy priorities for the next 12 months? So if, as I hope is the case, we're both sitting here on this stage in a year's time, what would you like to have achieved?
Simply speaking, to continue the trend that we're having on the budget deficit, and more importantly, not the overall deficit, the primary deficit. The next thing is to make sure that we're taking our level of debt in terms of relation to the GDP at a downward path. That should happen of two things: more control and achieving and reducing the primary deficit and starting achieving a primary surplus. And then the other thing, the more you reduce your budget deficit, the more inflation goes down, and then interest goes down, and hence we control our debt. We have to take it to a more manageable level. At the same time, growth in the economy takes place in a nice way. What's very important for us is to, I don't want to fancy myself and the rest that we want to achieve 7% and 8% and things like that. What we want to do is 6%, but on a longer term and sustainable way. What we suffered historically is that we make reform, and then 2-3 years later you fall in a trap, you fall in a big mistake, and you suffer from that a big way, and then you wait for 4 or 5 years until you recorrect that and you readdress that in a good way. So you're always on a roller coaster. You're not achieving any stability in terms of the progress that you want to achieve.
I think that's a very laudable goal, Your Excellency, and I think that we have every reason to hope and to believe that this administration is well placed to achieve that. So thank you from us. Thank you very much for giving us 50 minutes of your time. Please join me in thanking His Excellency. And thank you for coming in such a civilized time. We're now going to get more ministers should do that. Okay. Thank you again. Thank you. We're going to break for lunch now, and we'll start
here. Was in the retail sector, and we built a team on the ground from there on out. And the reason that we're in Egypt is because we see that Egypt is a growing market. It's an emerging market. It has lots of potential, and it has various asset classes that we can bring our expertise to. And that's not just the bread and butter of residential and office. We're looking at more strategic lines of healthcare, education, and the hospitality sector.
We'll come on to more detail to talk about them there, but I just wanted to give the audience a more sort of higher level view of it. So, Hassan.
My name is Hassan Hussein. I'm the chairman of Al-Ula, which is a mortgage finance company, a leasing company, and a real estate development company.
Okay, thank you. Ayman.
I'm Ayman Ismail. I'm chairman of ENG, which is the owner of Mountain View, and I guess I'm also here today in the capacity of the founding chairman for the new Egypt capital. I'm currently acting as a consultant to the company.
Okay. Maged, I'm sure everybody knows who Sadiq is. Why don't you tell us?
Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. I'm Maged Sharif. I'm the managing director of Sadiq, a local real estate developer.
Hasham, last. By no means least.
Hisham Shukri. I'm the chairman and CEO of Roya Group, Egyptian developer company.
Ayman, I'm going to start with you, and I have really two questions. First of all, tell us a little bit about this capital city project, what is actually happening, and specifically what is happening from a real estate investment point of view. Let's get a picture of
well, whenever I talk about the capital, first of all, I don't know where the audience are, because I pretty much can bet that, you know, half the audience would say, you know, why are we doing the capital? The other half saying this is a great idea. So I'll start.
Okay, hold on then. Wait, it's too tempting. If you think it's a good idea, put up your hands. Come on, properly high so I can see them. That's it. Don't be shy. If you don't think it's a good idea, put up your hands. Right, so half of you don't really have any idea at all. So it's half and half. You're absolutely right.
So we have three you know, thirds here.
We want to try and move those that
half want it, half don't want it, and the third don't really care, or sort of saying not decided yet. So anyway, so basically I'll start from here. You know, part of Egypt 2030 vision is basically urbanization. We as a country have two main resources. I strongly believe that the main resources for Egypt are basically land, where we today live on only 6 to 7% of our land. The rest is desert or not urbanized. And we have people. We've been growing very fast. Today we're approaching the 90 million. And I always say, like, you know, to put that into perspective, pharaohs used to live on 3% of our land, and there were less than 1 million. So we've been doing pretty much an amazing job in growing our population. We've not been doing a similar, greater job in growing our urbanization and land. So expanding and urbanizing, you know, the land is actually essential for us to be able to cope with the growth of the population that we have. If we zoom in a little bit more, you know, Cairo last year just won, you know, the #1 position in the fastest growing city in the world, actually beating, you know, Beijing, beating Tokyo, beating all those big cities. So we became the fastest growing city.
Is that a good thing?
It's a good thing for the new capital, because actually the new capital will live on population. You know, one of the key things is to grow the population in that place. So actually we have a growing population in the area of Cairo that need to expand somewhere. But, you know, the amazing designer of Cairo, and I always say they're amazing designer, you know, Cairo was designed to carry 5 to 6 million people. Today, depends on which time of the day, you're talking about anywhere between 18 and 20 million people and still operating. So, you know, the urban planner who actually did Cairo, we should all say, like, you know, this is amazing. What a great job for him to be able to accommodate that. So the new capital role here, it's not going to be a replacement of the current capital. It's actually an extension of Cairo. But a different extension from the sense of it's not a new 6th of October or a new Tagamma or new Cairo, because actually the thinking here is to deal with the real issue that Cairo is facing. One of the biggest issues that Cairo is facing is the concentration of all, you know, the government offices, being the minister offices or the prime minister, the parliament. All of that creates a lot of load on a city that was not built to accommodate that. In fact, many of you have visited a lot of the ministries, and you're actually walking into a palace that was not built to be a ministry, that was actually built to be very luxurious, that we turned it into offices. So one of the real issues is how do we relocate those people to a proper office building space and, you know, bring more realization to the assets that we have in Cairo. So parallel, I actually serve in another committee that has you know, a vision and an objective to bring Cairo back to its beauty in the 30s, and that's part of it. So the new capital role is to relocate all the government-related offices into that new space. When we looked at the vision of the city or of the new area, just again to put some numbers for the audience, The total land area is 170 fadan, which is basically, the same size of Singapore. Literally, meter to meter is the same size of Singapore. So when we looked at it, we sort of said, okay, now we need to shift our thinking from only moving the government and creating some residential spaces into dealing with it as a total city with the same size of Singapore. So that actually made us think differently about the vision of the new capital. And we started to look at it from an economical point of view. Just for perspective, Singapore today, GDP is $300 billion, which is equivalent to actually the same size of Egypt GDP. Dubai followed suit. They took the same model of Singapore. Today, they do around 100 billion annually. So we said, okay, why can't we create that? Why don't we look at that model and replicate it? So there's an economical component of the new capital. We aim to deliver $10 billion by 2030. That's the objective. This city, when it's at full capacity, and again, that depends on when, would carry 5 million people. It will be built for 5 million people. For us to deliver the $10 billion, we need a population of 1 million. Revenue would be linked to our ability to accelerate the relocation of people from around the capital to the capital. Now, key things that we've looked at, connectivity is one important element of the success. I think most of the audience here have heard about the new project that was actually signed during the last president's visit to China. So there will be an electric train that will connect Cairo, central Cairo, to the new capital. My kind of demand, if you want to call it, when I was at the office to the Minister of Transportation, is it needs to be no more than 30 to 40, or 30 to 30. We were aiming for 30 minutes. I think we will get close to 30, 40 minutes from central Cairo to the new capital. We're also looking at connectivity to the Suez Canal economical zone, so use that for all the economical activities. So that was important component of it. The other component is basically how do we create an impact on Cairo. So part of the new capital project is a parallel project of taking the old buildings and bring them back to their original purpose and actually create more value out of that. In the last period, we were able to complete the design for the government park. That's already completed. It's under construction right now, expected to be finished sometime in the 2018. There's a lot of will and push that the government would be relocated before 2019. The other thing that we were able to also do throughout the last year and a half is to bring developers in. So we had like a 1,500 fadan that was already awarded, and all of them were sold out to developer. And I think there will be more to come in the next few weeks, months. So that's, I don't know whether that would be enough or.
We have to move on, unfortunately. I do have one question. How is this all being paid for? How's it being financed?
Well, that's actually a very good question because, initially when this project was set, there was many options and most of those options were pursued. One of them was to give it to a developer to do it. Did not work out, and I think everybody knows that. The option was pursued is to create a company, a profit-oriented company. That's actually under Law 8. So it's a shareholding company. And it manages its own P&L. So all the development of that new capital will be paid, financed from within that company. It won't be financed from, government or.
And that company will own the assets?
Sorry?
That company owns the assets, it owns
Of
the
course,
buildings.
of course, yes. The company owns the land, and the land come to the company as part of the capital.
And is that capital from the government or private sector or a combination of the two?
So at that stage, it's from mostly the army and NUCA and the government.
Yeah.
And why NUCA? Because NUCA is actually an economical setup. It's not part of the ministry.
Right.
And part of NUCA's mandate is to reinvest the profit that it's making. And you know, for a company like NUCA being in the real estate, reinvesting in a real estate company makes a lot of sense. Eventually, you know, at the right time, this will be open also for other funds or private sector to come into the, you know, structure of the company.
Okay. Thank you, and we'll certainly come back to you. Megan, if I can come to you now. We heard a lot this morning about from the minister, from the panel, about the positive steps that have been taken in the macroeconomic environment in Egypt over the past 12 months. What is the current state of the market in the real estate, particularly the residential, the type of sectors that SODIC works in? How is that market performing? Has the revaluation of the currency, the IMF agreement, have this made any difference? And what's your outlook for the rest of the year and into next year?
I think, Richard, Egypt has very strong fundamentals when it comes to residential real estate industry. Looking at a country that has a housing gap of around 3.5 million units, looking at a gap that continues to grow by around 350,000 new marriages and accordingly need for new homes every year. Looking at a country whose population, 70% of the population is below the age of 35 years, looking at a country where the population resides on 6 to 7% of the land, I think this is a very strong statement about how solid the fundamentals underlying the industry are. I think we've gone through challenging times over the past couple of years. We've seen actions taken by the government to assist developers to continue to do business. If I were to give an example, it is basically shifting from the typical model whereby the government sells land, to the other model, which is the revenue shared model, to overcome the challenges of the continuous increase to prices, where prices have reached ridiculously high values. This model definitely assists and helps developers through reducing the required down payments, the fixed payments that have to be made as land installments every year. So generally speaking, we've seen a shift from the old model to a newer model that is still evolving. There will be challenges in the implementation of this model. However, with good intent from both sides, we will overcome those challenges. On the construction cost side, we've seen, of course, about 40% increase in our cost structures as a result of the devaluation, which has put a lot of pressure on us as developers to honor our existing commitments pre-made at the old, costs, because our contracts do not allow for price increases or contract value increases. This has represented a huge challenge to everyone, I'm sure. How can we honor our commitments? How can we meet the expectations of our different stakeholders, be it buyers, be it banks, be it the government, how can we honor those commitments? So this has represented but we've seen some actions from the government to relax, in a way, the payments, to allow for additional grace time, to make up for any stoppage or delays that have resulted because of the devaluation and the economic reforms. So overall, I think we've gone through very challenging times. However, with the very strong fundamentals underlying the industry, as I mentioned, and very challenging, very encouraging fundamentals, the market and the industry continue to perform well. And I believe this is one of the few sectors that have performed over the past couple of years. Egyptians, we love real estate. We think highly of real estate. We store value in real estate. So this was one of the main reasons that helped the industry to perform over the past couple of years. We still are bullish about the market going forward. We see opportunities. We see some changes. We see some adaptations that are needed to meet market expectations. Some of them put pressures on us. However, we are trying to be as flexible as possible in order to continue to do business as successfully as we did before.
Thank you. Some very interesting points there. Hasham, you're also in the residential development business, so I know that you will have faced some of the same challenges as Magad, rising prices of construction materials, and the demand, of course, for affordable housing within the country. How have you navigated the last few years, and do you now think that, seeing that quite a lot of the bad economic news is behind us, that the outlook is now perhaps more positive than it was a year or so ago for your business?
I think this year was very positive. I mean, some people were afraid of the devaluation, of the increase of the cost of the construction that happened to the developers. This is true, but let's see the other side, the other positive side. We saw the devaluation in the 2003, 2004, and after this devaluation, we had a boom in the real estate market, because always after devaluation, a lot of people who are maintaining the foreign currency as a reserve for them, when they saw that there is devaluation and there is a new price, they start to sell the foreign currency, and immediately they are oriented to the real estate sector to keep the value of their money and to go to the real estate before the boom of the real estate happened, because always the real estate is reflect in the prices, reflect the devaluation, but not immediately. It takes time. So it was obvious that after this devaluation, I was 100% sure that we will see a very strong market in sales. This is what happened. I think 2017 for all of us, it was a very good year in terms of sales. This is number one. Number two, also after devaluation, we opened a new market. The new market was very strong. It is the Egyptian working abroad. This is always this sector, this segment of Egyptians are one of the main buyers of real estate in Egypt. After devaluation, it was doubled. So the real estate product in Egypt became very cheap for them. They started to invest more. With the same amount of foreign currency, they can invest in more units. This is number one. Number two, there is another opportunity. Maybe until now we didn't take it in consideration, but I think this is very important in the next year to put in consideration, work on it, is selling for foreigners, selling units for foreigners, and especially I'm talking about second homes. This is a huge market all over the world. If you say it by numbers, it's very important to know that about the amount of sales of people buying outside the country every year is more than 250 billion US dollars. This is a huge market. If we work hard, we can take even 5%. 5% of this market will boom the real estate in Egypt. We are not working on it until now. We have to work hard to market our products, to brand our products, real estate products all over the world by going to exhibitions, by contacting, having products for real estate funds to invest in it. So there is a lot of things to do, but I think the devaluation was have a good side for the real estate sector in Egypt until now.
When we were speaking before, you mentioned that there were still some challenges in land. I mean, Ayman started this by saying that Egypt has two resources, I think. Well, there are more, but two main ones. You know, you got a lot of people, and you got a lot of land, and not in the same place. But and over the years that you and I have known each other, which is many, we've often talked about that being a problem, and that the government, and I've been all sorts of, not just the ministers we have here, but right down to the municipality level and the governance. It's been a challenge to get not just land, but the right sort of land in the right sort of place. Do you feel that now, as the finance minister said, and others said, that there is now more of a pragmatic attitude amongst the authorities to provide land on, in reasonable speed and at a reasonable price, or is that still a blockage as far as you're concerned?
No, still a blockage. Talk frankly. There is a lot of opportunities. They are presenting a lot of piece of land, but always with the mentality. I hope it has to be changed in Egypt. The mentality treating the land as a product in itself. The land is not a product. The land is a raw material. So you cannot always exaggerate the price of the raw material, because the most important is not to sell the land, is what you will do with the land. What is the added value you will have to the land? The land is priceless. Any land is priceless. The land have a price when you have a development around it. To continue on what Ayman said about the capital, new capital, and people are saying that new capital is important or not, just also I like to talk my numbers. If we want to keep our density we are living now, which is not fantastic, but if you want to keep the density of population distributed on the land now, in 2050 will be almost double. We are living on 70 million feddans. This is 6% or 7%. This means that we have to develop another 70 million feddans from here to 2050 in 35 years. This means that every year, an average of every year, 400,000 feddans have to be developed. The new capital is 170,000. So you imagine how we want to develop land. We don't want to sell land, we want to develop land. This is something very important. I think we are, the first thing is we have to approach the land as a raw material. So we don't, it's not important I will sell the land, how much the price is important. The most important, what I will do in this land. This is one thing. The second thing, I think also from the part of the government, I suggest, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I think we have to unify the owner of the land in Egypt. Always you have a lot of entities, a lot of you have the NUCA, you have the TDA, you have the governance, you have the Minister of Industry, for the industrial land. I think all of this have to be in one entity. One entity has a master plan of all Egypt, and then they give land to developers within the same strategy, having a vision for 2050. This is something I think very important, not to work as a pieces of mosaic. Every zone is working alone, TDA is working alone, NUCA is working alone. No, we have to assemble everything in one entity having same policy in the land and having idea of, and principle that the land is raw material. This is, I think, something, if you want to solve the problem of the issue of the land.
Quick, because I need to bring in the other two before we run out. But go.
I think, you know, I totally agree with, you know, the way Hisham articulated that question, because it's a very important question, and we've been asked that question, I think, for the last 5 years, since we've ever had any interaction with each other. But I think it's also very, very important to note that actually over the last 24 months, 18 months, if you want to call it, that the amount of land that was offered is surpassing what was offered in the last 10 years. So there's a volume right now into being pushed into the pipeline, if you want to call it. Unfortunately, you know, we've worked on part of the solution, not the full solution. So we've pushed the land, yet we did not, you know, change the thinking in the pricing. So we've done actually 2 good things over the last few years. One is the amount of land that's being offered to developer increased significantly and dramatically. 2, NUCA introduced different means of awarding the land, like the partnership, etc. The areas that we've not been able to do yet, actually the bigger one is to create this urban you know, land institute that actually does the total master plan, and we've been always talking about that, and that's the ultimate solution. The second one is to think of the pricing not as only mean to actually fund other projects, but what is the end, you know, in line in that. Like if I knew that this piece of land is extremely important to solve the issues of most of the gap that we have today, which is middle class income type of population, then I would say offering the land at that price will never make any developer, you know, other than non-profit organization or an organization that willing to actually put money out of their pocket to actually acquire the land at that price and serve those segments. So I think that's the area that you know, good that we're making progress, yeah, but we still need to put the pressure of, okay, you need to think about it differently right now. Now, I think this will happen because actually the result of the last offering of the land were not really satisfactory. I mean, not a lot of people went out and wanted to acquire the land. So I think the adjustment will happen.
But I think there's a huge opportunity in what you're saying, because if the government are prepared to unlock the land, and you can get involved with a private developer who's going to do all the good things that you're talking about, master plans and getting a community together, which is going to fulfill the needs of the middle class who are coming through. There's a win-win situation for everybody.
Absolutely.
Instead of the government hanging out for the highest price and the developer saying, well, I've got the means, but I haven't got the financial capability, I think there needs to be a meeting of the minds somewhere to bring this together.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. Now, just to be fair, we all know here that, you know, some of those issues related to laws.
Correct.
You know, and basically puts the hand of some of the people in the government. Now, I've had a taste of that a little bit, that you know that you basically, your ability to maneuver is not easy. So we have to recognize it's not easy. That doesn't mean that we should, you know, stop. We have to continue to demand, because actually that's the only way to address those issues. There's no other way.
And it's a simple solution.
It is a simple
It's a case of
Absolutely.
sitting down and changing the laws and getting something that works for everybody concerned.
Simple solution while we're sitting here, yes.
In a way, yeah, I appreciate that.
Chair you're on.
It's not insurmountable.
Yeah. Because I think that's not insurmountable, is it?
Yeah.
Simple, but maybe not easy. Hassan, let's come to you. We will come back, John, in a minute. I want to take a sort of finish what we're talking about on a bigger picture. But Hassan, we've heard from the sort of the developer's side. Now, obviously, you are on the other, one of the other sides of this trade, the financing side. The mortgage market in Egypt has been, you know, a long time in development and has been around for a while and has grown well, but not spectacularly. Again, same sort of question to you. Have a lot of the narrative we're hearing today from the economists and the ministers is, in the last year, the corner was turned, and that Egypt is now investable again, that many of the really challenging issues of the last 5-6 years have been resolved. Do you see that in your business? Do you see there's a change in sentiment, a change in demand, in the willingness of people to take out mortgages? What's different in your business from a year ago?
Well, the real estate financing in general is not only mortgage as well. Banks finance real estate projects as well as non-banking institutions like leasing, like mortgage, like factoring. So the real estate finance market is much larger than mortgage. And also you have on the other side, you have funds, and you have a little bit of companies who invest in the real estate on the purpose of making an investment, whether it's short term or long term. The mortgage market has grown to around 6 billion Egyptian pounds, so that's not a dramatic achievement compared to a leasing market of around 16 billion pounds. The leasing market is also active in real estate finance. It's 60% financing real estate, so that's around 10 billion in leasing projects in the real estate. Factory is also around 6-7 billion market. Part of it goes to real estate constructors, small constructors, financing SMEs. So you have a much larger, wider access to financing for different types of projects. The mortgage itself now is you have a little bit of a different type of financing for the mortgage. You have the developers themselves offering financing for the house that they're selling up to 10 years, sometimes up to 12 years. And on the other side, you have the mortgage finance companies who are offering mortgage finance and to the final client. So it's a kind of very diversified market and very wide and different types of instruments.
What can be done in? Sorry, I was just trying to see whether there were any questions coming in on our Twitter feed. So, if you want to ask a question, hashtag EM Egypt on that as well. But I know that there are lots of different sorts of finance, but it's still the real estate finance business is still relative to countries, say in Europe or the US or even in the GCC, is relatively a small market. Would it be fair to say that, okay, if you had more finance available, if there were more institutions, institutional investors, banks, companies, if there were more people willing to finance, would that make a difference? Or is the problem on the demand side rather than on the supply side?
No, I think it would make a difference. The market has developed over the past 10 years. We started with only banks that was lending to the real estate. Then we went to the mortgage, and then we have the leasing. So it has been growing. We need more funds, of course. We need more private equity funds. The fund law itself needs to be reviewed, needs to be made easier to invest in real estate properties. It's more geared to investing overall in a number of projects and not in one specific project. So it has certain advantages and certain disadvantages. It needs to be looked at again. But we need more private equity. We need more funds investing in real estate. I think we have only one fund that has started. They're doing now the second fund. And there are companies who are investing in real estate but are not calling themselves funds in order not to be under the law of the funds, which is more restrictive. So we need definitely more instruments, but on the other side, you have on the capital market side companies like Sodic. It's already on the stock market. To the other sectors of the economy, like all the others.
I think one of the tools of the financing of the sector of real estate in Egypt is real estate funds. Real estate funds, I think we have an issue. Now we have a new law of the real estate funds in Egypt, but until now we saw only two that was established. I think maybe there is another third one, but it's not working so hard. I think there is an issue about the taxes. Let's talk frankly.
Yes.
All over the world, the real estate funds, they are not paying taxes for the assets they are buying and selling after them. This is a way of encouraging the funds to invest in the real estate. We had a problem. We talked about this. We asked the authorities at the time they had the law, they're preparing the law, please don't put taxes on the real estate funds to encourage them to work at least the first 5 years. But they didn't accept, and this is what happened now. We are stuck. We have a law, but we don't have the real estate funds. I think this is a step very important for the real estate sector in Egypt, that we have to encourage real estate funds to be established. Maybe after 5 years, if they want to apply taxes, but let them start and let them attract international real estate funds also to come to Egypt through the Egyptian real estate fund. This is something I think very important in the finance of the sector.
I think, Chris, you know, in the previous days, the real estate funds were actually more needed for the commercial, non-residential, call it. While the residential, because of the selling off plan, had its own model, very efficient, was working very well. I think that's changing, because right now, you know, just drive through Cairo, you'll see on all the billboards 10 years kind of payment plan that actually changed that whole model, which actually bring even the real estate residential to a need of fund that probably in the previous years they didn't need as much. Now, if they fund all of that through equities, like, you know, most of the companies do right now, that will lower the return on equity, will make all the financial of these companies looks far less attractive than ever before. So I think the need for a fund is becoming now an essential and a needy to continue to grow the market, especially that, you know, with all the price increases that have been happening, the customer also are demanding, you know, a longer payment terms than ever before. I think the 10 years will be a start. We probably might see more, and we might actually see some people saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to cut that, even if we are going to sacrifice some sales. So the dynamic is changing right now, and I think, you know, that's the time for real estate funds to come in, and we need to encourage it, because other than that, I think the market will start to struggle.
I need to say something here, Richard, please. I think we have now some kind of two different real estate markets. One is the real estate market that is offered by the developers that are offering 10 years and etc. So these are that they're having a good time selling easily to the final investor. And then you have the other real estate market, which is the more or less the secondary market, where you and I own a house and want to sell it to another person for a cash. And then here you have a little bit of a problem, is that you don't have that much of liquidity and cash, because people would rather go to a developer rather than going and buying from someone who wants cash and invest in it. So I think this is here where the mortgage market can become a saver to the real estate market as a whole. And this is really where we need to push the government to be more proactive in changing the laws, making it more easily for the mortgage markets to work, and making the whole market more liquid than it is today.
I want to bring John in here, because he's been very patient, and we brought him all the way here. I mean, I don't know whether you're sort of picking up the same vibe as me. I mean, Egypt is still in its infancy in terms of institutional market. What's the reasoning why is it a beneficial thing for the market and for Egypt to make it more institutionalized, to start segmenting it properly, to start bringing in what you would call capital markets products, different types of products, more funds, maybe REIT structures, all of this. What does this institutionalization mean for Egypt, and where would you start?
I think the first thing you need to look at is the market and where are we in the curve. And I think if we're really honest with ourselves, the commercial real estate market is probably quite far down the curve. Because if you speak to institutional investors internationally and you ask them where they want to invest, and it's the core markets around the world. You do get some people who say, look, I'm looking for something which is maybe a bit opportunistic or which is going to give me a good return. And I think that was proven when Eastern Europe opened up. Before Eastern Europe opened up, Poland and Romania and Bulgaria and all those countries, Czechoslovakia, there was very little inward investment for various reasons. As soon as they were opened up, they came part of Europe. I mean, Poland now is probably the logistics hub of of Europe. And you go and try and buy a shed with a DHL tenant or an Amazon or something like that, and you're going to pay through the nose. Now, what we need to do in the Egyptian real estate market, and coming back to your point of everybody moving out of Cairo and going east, is that we need to have a look at the government ministries that are going out there. And if the Ministry of Law or the Ministry of Finance is going out there, there's probably a deal to be done with some of the top 5 law firms and the top 5 accounting firms, taking them out of central Cairo, moving them next to the relevant ministry, phoning up somebody abroad and saying, I've got a building here, would you like to buy it? I've got PwC or one of the big law firms from London who are 20,000 square meter tenants, and would you like to buy it and put it into your fund? The exit strategy is always very, very important when people are coming into a particular market, because the last thing you want to do is bring $100 million into the country, and as we were saying earlier, go out with 50. That's not going to work in anybody's investment criteria. So, is there an opportunity for inward-bound investment to come from around the world into Europe, into Egypt, and buy some of these assets and work with some of these developers or work with the government? Absolutely. We've discussed various asset classes, but 2 of the asset classes that I am very, very keen on, and we are very keen on as a company, is healthcare and education. There's 2.5 million square meters of healthcare required in Cairo in the next 10 years, of which 500,000 of that is required in Cairo. Now, for somebody who wants to get out of the residential investment or out of commercial investment and wants to get into something with a long-term gain to it, those are asset classes. You know, again, with that, if you've got a hospital, I was listening to one of the sessions earlier, and apparently they need something like 6,000 nurses in Egypt. So maybe there's an opportunity to build a training hospital. So you've got the training hospital, you've got the healthcare requirement that's being met. There's also a deal to be done with doctors, because some of the doctors will work part-time in the government hospitals, and they might have their own private practice. So they might be keen to put a clinic together on the same site as the hospital and do a deal there. So they've got patients which are feeding the hospital. And again, that ties into the communities. Make sure that these communities are planned properly. You're talking about the metro that's going to go 30-minute ride from the new development, capital development, into Cairo. It's been proven that if you have a property along the metro line, the value of that could be 25% higher than if you're further away. You start to add various golf course entities. You start to look at views, and all of a sudden, the master plan that you've got starts to form a community which, not that that's going to be of any benefit to international investors, but you start to build something which has got sustainability. Is there a market in Egypt for property funds? I think there is, because there's money which is washing around in Egypt.
What would they invest in?
Well,
companies or the buildings or the assets themselves?
I would say the assets themselves. You're going to be cleaning out Egypt. Sure. So there's going to be some opportunities there, opportunistic possibly.
But the capital is looking for somebody to develop a medical facilities, you know, across the board, whatever the size is. So yes, there's zillions of investment opportunities, whether in medical, whether in commercial, whether in industries like textile or cinema industry. All of those are on the list of the economic.
And if you look across the GCC, there are healthcare facilities who are crying to expand into this part of the world.
Yeah, yeah. And
so there's a need,
sure,
and there's a demand.
Yeah, and actually, you know, to your point, when we looked at that industry today is a $16 billion industry in our region. Concentration today is between Jordan and Lebanon. Yes. These are the number one and two.
Lebanon's dropped off a bit.
Well, yeah, so these are the two. Now, when we really look deeper into it, a lot of the doctors, you know, significant amount of the doctors in Jordan are Egyptians. Now, the funny thing is significant number of the patients are Egyptians. So we actually literally have people meeting at the airport to travel, to go and do the operation and build the economy of another country. Yeah, a neighboring country, a friendly country, we love it. But we have a huge opportunity here. So medical
tourism is huge. And if you can capitalize on some of that, you've got an absolute winner.
But John, I mean, I understand completely where you're coming from. It requires, I think, two things. And I don't know where we are with this in Egypt, but one requires a suitable legislation to enable an investor, a third party, to own the asset. Are we there with that yet? I mean,
I doubt it.
Doubt it, right. Okay, because, I mean, seriously, that's the first thing. And secondly, it requires a shift in attitudes. So that rather, if I'm a company or a hospital, I don't want to own my own building. I just want to run the hospital. Correct. I don't want to hand the facilities and the asset management. So my question is, you know, how do we get from where we are now to that? Is it a question of who lobbies for that? Is it people like you, people like us?
I think it starts with the master developer when they're putting together their scheme, and within that scheme they need certain elements to make it a development or a community where people don't have to travel too far. So if you've got a zoning for a hospital and you've done all your homework and you know how many people you're going to have in the community and you're going to know what your catchment area is, it's like building a shopping mall. I mean, you don't just build a shopping mall because you think it's a great idea. You have a look at where people are coming from, what the access to the entity is, and the same with a healthcare facility. If you have the zoning for a healthcare facility, come and talk to us. We'd be more than happy to sit down with any of the developers across Egypt and crunch the numbers for you. Do the feasibility, look at the financial aspects of it, look for the operator if need be, and then if you don't want to hold it, we go and find an end user investor.
What I want to say here is that when Ayman was speaking about the capital city, the government is building the capital city. So I think it's a matter of structuring the deal from the beginning, thinking that one day you will sell it to an investor. And this is not part of our Egyptian thinking.
That's right.
And this is exactly where the problem lies, is that we put all the obstacles by creating a local wrong structure that at the end does not fit into an international
But I think
model.
you have the opportunity now.
You have to know how the international market works, so you'll be able to structure something that you can offer to them.
Just to reassure you, this is actually part of it is happening, and I'll give you a practical, real example. One of the other economical area that we've looked at and we said we should focus on is education. And basically, there's a lot of dynamics that helps that story. Many countries, UK, US, the kind of restrictions on student visas are going higher and higher. So many of the universities around the world are now recognizing that they're going to lose a significant amount of revenue because of the international students, mostly students coming from our regions. So we said, okay, how can we create from this capital a hub for education? Now, laws were not allowing that to happen before. They are now. actually now, you know, the Ministry of Higher Education are accepting branches of universities in different countries. Already 2 or 3 have been signed, and the pipeline has more to come. So the pressure, as you were saying, is coming and is going to happen. It's just not an easy process.
And I think the group that sit down with the various ministries and present, this is what we want to do, and this is for Vision 2030. Somebody might walk away and go, you know what, this sounds like a fantastic idea, I can make a difference.
Sure. I think the problem from the funds, from real estate funds to invest in healthcare or anything in Egypt, I think next year it will be better for them, more attractive, because their issues were 2 things. Number one, there was no real value of the money. So he knows that before the devaluation, when he comes with the US dollars, if he make an exit scenario, he will take his money the half. Now, I think it's more stable, as long as the investors are seeing that the US dollars is stable with the value of the Egyptian pounds, then he will be encouraged to come, and he knows that after 3, 4, 5 years, they will not see another hard devaluation. This is number one. Number two, I think we had a problem of the exit scenario. This was a very huge problem, that at a certain moment, if I want to liquidate my assets, I cannot have my money back to my country. And I think this now is solved with the new law of investment. So I think these 2 issues was very important. This is the most 2 important issues that made in the last years investors that don't want to invest in Egypt. And I have a lot of negotiations, a lot of discussions with some of them. And these were the 2 issues that they have a problem with. How to take their money back. They are not sure that they can take their money back any time. And the number 2 is, what is the value of the money when I'm changing with which market, the black market or the official market?
Devaluation and repatriation.
I think now with these 2 issues solved, maybe 2018 we can see more investors encouraged to invest in healthcare, in education, in offices and retails. I think maybe
maybe there's an opportunity to put a fund together, a healthcare fund or an education fund, and list that on the Egyptian Stock Exchange. So people who want to get involved in real estate, they don't have to go out and buy a piece of real estate. They can go and buy something in a real estate fund, which is professionally managed, and they're looking at the return. So it might be a case of you get all the smart developers together and you say, right, that's A-grade building, it's core. We want to take 30% of that entity and we want to put it into the fund. So you might have $100 million to start off with, and you build that. And it's something that colleagues are looking at here in Egypt to see how we can list real estate funds, how it's possible to do it. We've done it around the world. This is a new market, great opportunities, and it's something that we will look at. So if we can bring people in and then to get them to invest in Egypt, and we can get the Egyptians investing in real estate, and we can help with the healthcare and education sector, then the move we made back in 2001 to come to Egypt will have paid off. It's a long play. We're not here, and we're not going to solve these problems today or tomorrow. We're here for a long play, as is real estate.
And this is unfortunately our time is up, and I'm sorry we could go on for a lot longer, but let me close with the question. And I'll last, you go last, John, okay? Because I think I know what your answer might be. But is the next step for the Egyptian real estate market to become more institutional, to start to develop more types of financing, legal structures, regulatory structures that allow developers, residential, commercial, whatever they are, to have more options as to how they finance things? So do you think we should become more institutional in Egypt in terms of investment into real estate?
I think we need, what you talk about is strategy on acquiring the land is something very important. This is number one. Number two, we make the experience that people can exit, because we have the law that people can exit, but we want to see it applied. I want to see some investors having invested in Egypt, and if they want to take their money back, it's very easy. I think investors want to see it applied. This is number two, it's very important. I think the finance also is the problem because we as developers, if we want to tackle the issue of healthcare, of education, of offices and retails, we cannot finance a plan as we make in the residential. We have to finance it in a way or another. So we need to go as a developer, this is something duty of the developers, we need to go to some kind of new finance. Maybe being listed in the market, in the stock market, is one of the way of having finance. Being more open to investors to invest in the company, in equity. Because some of the developers, they don't like to have strangers coming in the company. They prefer to have it 100% owned by them than to have a stranger coming in the board. But I think this is something you have to rethink about it, that we have to be, as developers, we have to be more open to investors to come to invest in the company. It's a way of financing through increasing the capital, and then they can go to the healthcare or to the education, to self-finance. I think also the banks have to be more flexible about financing some projects, because the problem of the banks in Egypt that they are very they are not risk taker anyhow. They prefer to see sales first and then to finance after that. This model is applied in the housing, in the second home, but it's not applied in the office, retails, and education. So if you go to the bank to have finance for commercial or retail or an educational or healthcare building, there is no off-plan, there is no sales. It's hard for them to finance. Not all the banks accept.
So it's sorry, we do need to rush, but it's a multiplicity of different things. Megan, more institutional, do you think, or?
Yeah, I think as a publicly listed company, we do lots of roadshows. We conduct many meetings with institutional investors. I think it is happening. Many of the issues that have always been addressed by international institutions, like repatriation of funds, like expectations for devaluation, those things are happening. There's more clarity. More clarity is being brought, to the process. However, it is still, and it requires more clarity going forward. They also need to see more, partnership happening between the developers and the government, the regulators, in terms of understanding how developers think about investments, be it on the residential side or the non-residential asset classes, and accordingly get to an understanding about what the right pricing is for land.
Ivan, more institutional, or is it something else?
No, I think eventually we need to get more institutional. I think the question is by what degree. And I think if you look at models around the world, I mean, big markets like US is not that institutional, if you want to call it. Europe is not that institutional. And I think that comes with the industry. Now, we are at the very, very, very far end of that. I mean, the very institutional would be a place like Dubai or UAE. That's fully institutional, so that's the spectrum. Where do we stand? I think somewhere in between. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take us far longer time than anybody else. And that's mainly driven by that you are in a very fragmented market. I mean, the biggest developer in Egypt would not even account for 5% of the total market. So the fragmentation here is actually a factor of how institutional or how fast you go toward institutional. Secondly, the main raw material is controlled by one entity. That's actually not only controlled by that entity, but the entity itself is controlled by many old laws that actually makes them not able to maneuver fast enough to develop the market on where it needs to be developed. And I think the third aspect of it is we have not yet found the formula to attract mega real estate funds around the world. In fact, we are created every single formula, if you want to call it, to make all those people come, have a look at the market and say, wow, I need to be in that market. And they probably lost Sharif for what, a week, with few meetings, with few people, and they just say, okay, thank you very much. When you change 1, 2, 3, it's a long list. Give me a call if you ever change it. Right. So I think those three main reasons would be like, and our ability to move. I think consolidation will happen. I think so. When you see companies like the New Capital being a private company controlling a big piece of land, that actually ease a little bit of the government control over the land, because this new company has many ways of offering the land versus what the government offers. So there's some progress on those areas, not fast enough. I think the third one is legislation, and it needs somebody to really, really work that hard.
Hassan, final words from you. Do you think more institutionalization, more legislation? What are the solutions to get some more of this market moving?
Definitely more institutionalization, more retail, more commercial, more non-residential, more cash flow generating real estate companies, and more capital market. And as Ayman said, maybe registration, but more important than registration, an organization that is responsible for the overall real estate management of the country.
Thank you. John, where do you start? I mean, I know that you're not from here, so you can temper your marks as you wish, but what would you say as a man of experience in many, many...
I think, first of all, the private sector needs to start working with the government to get the private-public partnerships going. I think we need to have a look at getting institutional type developments going. And I'm not saying that every single development that you do has to be, oh, this has got to be on sold to an institution. Because if you take Dubai on a scale of institutional investment, it doesn't feature. People are not interested because the structure of the units, the way they've been sold out. Nobody wants to buy a pension fund, doesn't want to buy 15 units in a 100-story tower. They want to have control of the complete tower. So that's not an option. And I think if we can start to put reform in place and work towards that, and start working towards looking at funds, looking at institutional type developments, and also the quality. Even if we forget about the institutional side of it, let's look at the international quality. What do the international players who come into this market want? We struggle. We get requests for 20 to 25,000 square meters of real estate, and we've got nowhere to take them in Cairo, because either the traffic's a problem, or where they want to be, you can't get what you're looking for. So, yes, I think the institutional market needs to be looked at. But I think also the local market maybe needs to have a look at how they can accommodate funds within Cairo, and maybe look at the residential sector as well. Maybe there's something to be done there.
Well, very interesting. We've run over by 15 minutes, and I apologise for that, but the conversation was going on. I'm sure we could continue to go on, but we all have homes to go to. Even if it takes us a little time to get there and cross the wonderful Cairo traffic. So I will bid you a good night. I will say, please be with us tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Tariq Kabil, Minister of Commerce and Industry, will be here. I'll be interviewing him, and a full programme tomorrow. But before you go, as always, please give a very warm Euromoney thank you to our wonderful panelists.
Thank you, Richard.
نتكلم عن مشاركة شركة الأولى هذا العام في اليوروموني في دورته ال 22. أهم ما يميز في هذه الدورة عن باقي الدورات
الدورة الحالية متميزة بالحضور، في حضور أجنبي قوي ممثل في الشركات الأجنبية الموجودة، بالإضافة إلى البنك الأجنبي اللي اشترى باركليز مؤخرا. فده حضور أجنبي كويس وبيدي دلالة كويسة على أن الاستثمار في مصر بالذات الاستثمار الأجنبي المباشر بيعمل بنجاح، وبالتالي فإن المستقبل الاستثمار في مصر ماشي على الخطة المرسومة من الحكومة بالاتفاق مع صندوق النقد الدولي. فالوضع كويس، زائد ان الحضور السنة دي والمؤتمر ممتاز، واحنا دي 7 سنة بنشارك فيها في المؤتمر بتاع اليوروموني يعني.
لو حابين نقول هناك جلسة مقررة للقطاع العقاري في مصر، أبرز ما سيتم تناوله أو عرضه من قبل الشركات الأولى خلال هذه الجلسة؟
احنا كأولى عندنا شركة تمويل عقاري وعندنا شركة تأجير تمويلي، والاثنين بيمولوا القطاع العقاري بدرجات مختلفة. طبعا تأجير تمويلي السوق بتاعه كسوق تمويل تأجير تمويلي حوالي 15 مليار، حوالي 60% من هذا المبلغ تقريبا في القطاع العقاري، يعني حوالي 9 مليار تقريبا. بالإضافة إلى التمويل العقاري حوالي 6-7 مليار بيمول القطاع العقاري بالذات، القطاع السكني بالذات. التأجير التمويلي الليسنج فيه أكتر على القطاع التجاري والقطاع التجزئة، بالإضافة إلى باقي الأنشطة الاقتصادية بصفة عامة. فإحنا مشاركين السنة دي ك3 شركات في التأجير التمويلي والتمويل العقاري والاستثمار العقاري، ونتمنى النجاح للمؤتمر إن شاء الله.
لو حابين نقول إن تركيز المؤتمر هذا العام أكثر على السياسات النقدية وتمويل البنك الدولي وتحرير الدولار، هل من وجهة نظر حضرتك من خلال جلسات المؤتمر اقتناع المجتمع الدولي أو مجتمع الرأسمالي الدولي بالخطوات الإصلاحية اللي الحكومة المصرية خدتها؟
والله أنا شايف إن المستثمرين الأجانب بالذات الحضور النهارده في اليوروموني أكثر إيجابية من المصريين يعني، فعندهم الصورة أوضح لأنه شايفينها من بعيد وشايفينها بموضوعية أكتر. فشايفين الحكومة قامت بإجراءات واضحة ومحددة بالنسبة لتعويم الدولار، بالنسبة للدعم، بالنسبة لكل الإجراءات الإصلاح اللي اتخذت. فشايفين الحكومة ماشية على خطة واضحة وماشية بطريقة سيستماتيك فيها ديناميكية وبناءة، وشايفين المستقبل الاستثمار في مصر أكثر إيجابية من أغلب المصريين الموجودين في المؤتمر يعني.
ما الجديد لدى الشركة الأولى التي تقدمه للسوق العقاري؟
احنا الجديد عندنا ان احنا بنتوسع في كل المجالات، سواء في الاستثمار العقاري او في التأجير التمويلي او في التمويل العقاري. بنمول مشروعات عقارية وبنمول مشروعات زي محطات كهرباء ومحطات مياه. شركة بتتوسع في كل رأسيا وأفقيا، وربنا يوفق الجميع إن شاء الله.
شكرا.
الدكتور فايز عز الدين، رئيس غرفة التجارة الكندية في مصر والشرق الأوسط.
فندم، تعليقات حضرتك على انعقاد مؤتمر اليوروموني بالتزامن مع إعلان الحكومة والبنك المركزي المصري تطبيق منظومة الشمول المالي؟
هو مؤتمر اليوروموني مؤتمر مهم جدا بالنسبة لمصر وبالنسبة لمنطقة الشرق الأوسط، لأنه بيعتبر النافذة لرؤية المستثمر الخارجي بالنسبة للاقتصاد المصري وظروف الاقتصاد المصري. حضرتك تعلم أن احنا تم تطبيق في الفترة القريبة الأخرانية، عندك قانون الاستثمار الجديد، عندك اللائحة التنفيذية الخاصة به، وايضا تم عمل اللي هو ترخيص. حضرتك كنت بدل ما تاخد ترخيص دلوقتي في 600 يوم بتاخده في اسبوع او 15 يوم. دي طفره كبيره، احنا بنحاول كغرفة التجارة الكندية بنعرض هذه الظروف والتطورات الجديدة في كندا، ونيجي اليوروماني على اساس ان ده بيعتبر النافذة للظروف المحيطة بمصر والقوانين الجديدة في مصر، فده أهمية اليوروماني بالنسبة لمصر.
الفرص الاستثمارية الواحدة ما بين المستثمرين الكنديين ونظائرهم المصريين.
حضرتك عندك مجالات كثيرة جدا. عندنا مجال التعليم، وأحب أقول لحضرتك أن تم عمل تأسيس جامعة كندية موجودة في القاهرة في العاصمة الإدارية الجديدة. عند حضرتك في مجال التعدين احنا شغالين مع الشركات اللي تم رسو المناقصات عليها، وهم 4 شركات بالنسبة للتنقيب عن الذهب في مصر. عند حضرتك في مجال التعدين زي ما قلت لحضرتك، في مجالات اخرى زي مجال تحلية المياه شغالين فيها، في مجال اللي هو في القاهرة العاصمة الإدارية الانفراستراكشر اللي هي البنية التحتية داخلين فيها، داخلين برضو في تم توقيع مع شركة كندية في الخط السادس لمترو الأنفاق ب1.1 مليار، فإذا في مشاريع كثيرة كندا داخلة بيها في مصر في هذه العام.
ايه المباحثات الفنية او الخبرات الفنية اللي ممكن كندا تديها لمصر فيما يتعلق بالتدريب والتطوير؟
اهم حاجه حضرتك ان احنا عايزين تطوير الجانب البشري، وده احنا وقعنا مع غرفه التجاره الكنديه مع وزاره النقل على اساس ان احنا نتعاون مع معهد النقل الموجود في القاهره بتطوير العامل البشري في قطاع النقل، وده موضوع مهم جدا. حضرتك لو تشوف حوادث النقل اللي بتحدث اغلبها بيبقى نتيجه للعامل البشري والخطا البشري، ده احنا بنحاول نصلحه بالتدريب والتطوير في هذا القطاع، وده قطاع مهم جدا. واحنا شغالين مع قطاعات اخرى زي وزاره الاتصالات، زي وزاره الكهرباء، زي وزاره النقل، كل ده شغالين فيه.
اجمالي الاستثمارات المتوقعه من الجانب الكندي خلال العام المالي الجديد؟
لغايه نهايه 2017 بنتوقع ان جمله الاستثمارات الكنديه في مصر هتتراوح حوالي 10 مليار دولار ان شاء الله.
وزاره الاستثمار والتعاون الدولي عملت مجموعه من الحزم التشريعيه وبعض الاجراءات للتيسير على المستثمرين، من بينها انشاء مركز الاتصالات والتاسيس الالكتروني للشركات. كيف ترى هذا الانجاز؟
احب اقول لحضرتك كل الانجازات اللي حضرتك بتتكلم عليها لابد من وضعها في ارض الواقع الاول، وبعدين نشوف نتائجها. ما اقدرش احكم عليها من الان قبل ما يتم تطبيق، وبعد التطبيق هنقدر نحكم عليها اذا كانت فعلا فيها مشاكل ام لا. دلوقتي مش هقدر اقول لحضرتك.
المبادره بوجه عام للتيسير على المستثمرين كيف ترى؟
هي مبادرة كويسة جدا، بس ما زلت بقول لحضرتك التطبيق أهم عندي من القوانين. احنا بنحط قوانين كويسة جدا براقة جدا، لائحة تنفيذية براقة جدا، ولكن عند التطبيق بنصطدم بمشاكل كثيرة، فاحنا لازم نستنى لغاية التطبيق وبعدين نقول نجح المشروع أم لا.
دكتور فايز،
شكرا يا فندم.